how to find and select your niche. Does anyone want to give this a go before I get Chris Taylor involved? I'm sure no one's gonna jump in now. But does anyone have any thoughts on this, on how to find and select your niche, or just want to expand on the question a bit more and maybe add some context to a personal challenge they're facing there?
I think, I mean, I've been on a couple of these now with you, Barry, and, chats, in different Slack communities. And I'm still new to Fractional, as you know. And what I've learned so far that I'm hoping to expand on and learn in this session, I suppose, is the best way of kind of targeting and marketing for your niche. Because so far what I understand is that, you need to narrow down and focusing on a particular, call it, an ideal customer profile or something along those lines. Certainly for me, I was making my kind of outbound marketing too broad, shall we say. But then you don't want to be too narrow that you're kind of missing other opportunities. So it's how to identify that for yourself, but also how you size it so that it's not too big or not too small.
Yes, great question.
I want to expand on that question as well. I was one of the ones who voted on it. And the reason why I voted on it is the complexity around the niche you think you have compared to the niche your clients think you have. For me, quite often it didn't match, and I was surprised with what my clients were being grateful of me compared to what I thought what my niche was. I think I want to also understand which one we should pursue and how should we choose that niche to develop on, how should we find it.
Ben, go ahead.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I guess that raised a good question for me, is like what we mean by a niche, because I've read a few different things, and in my head it was like a sort of a narrow area of industry or problem that I'm particularly interested in. So like for me it's sustainable retail. I'd describe that as a niche that I was targeting, rather than the thing I do or the thing I'm good at or the thing my clients like about me. So I guess, is that more brands? And what do we mean? What do we mean, or what do you mean when we're talking about niche here? Just so that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, carving through it. Chris, can I hand over to you at this point as somebody that I know you've got a lot of experience in this to try and cut through some of the terms around this and how you understand this?
You can. I mean, it's a very, very broad subject in terms of niching. It's like, it's massive. There's so many different segments and areas that you can go down into. I agree with you, Ben. For me, like, a niche is a particular demographic, target market, something that you want to stand for, and something that you want to almost become in the eyes of your ideal client. I don't believe in you just having one specifically. You don't have to. I think some people, and you'll have to forgive me if I go off on tangents, but I will always bring it back, because I think it's important to add the context. I don't think it's right niching for niching's sake. I think you should niche if you've got a specialist area where you can add some real value and you see an opportunity. If there is that, and there's potential for you to then get exposure into that area and you become the person that's known for it, fantastic. What we see time and time again in this space, especially in the fractional space, is that people pigeonhole themselves, as in they go too narrow. And therefore what happens is you become known for something that you didn't quite mean to, and therefore you miss out on opportunities that you want. So like, the starting point for me is basically almost having a blank piece of paper, drawing a line down the middle of it and going, right, where are all the opportunities that I want to work in? What are all the niches and the areas and the demographics and industries that I think I can add value in? And then on the other side is, where do you want to add value? Because for me, there's some niches which I can definitely add some value in for sure, but I don't really want to work in them. There's some areas that are quite boring that I don't want to touch upon, and therefore I don't want to label myself as them. So I guess that kind of starts off really the answer to the question around niching. I think it opens up opportunity, but it can also close it. And I guess the next question off the back of it is, well, do I do it or not? And that's all a personal preference. Like you can see some people that work in, just looking at the names on here, you've probably got data people, you've got software, you've probably got people in finance, and that automatically puts you in a certain segment and target market where you can stand out. For me, it's all about testing. I don't think you have to be definitive on it. I think first off, you write down, you do that exercise. Where do I want to spend my time? Where do I have expertise? Because they don't always directly correlate in terms of like areas of expertise and areas of passion. And then you find one that typically hits both, and that's where you start. And you test it to see what reaction you get. And then from there, over time, you start to become known for certain things. And if something doesn't take off and you don't get the level of engagement and you don't get the level of inquiries that you're after, you can very quickly move out, pivot, and do something else. People get very definitive on this stuff, and I don't think we need to. I think it's just about understanding what we're passionate about, where our expertise is, and then narrowing down and picking one to test initially.
Yeah, Paul, go ahead. Thanks, Chris, by the way. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, hi. I haven't got a lot of experience of doing fractional, which is one of the reasons I'm here today, but I do a lot of work with startup founders where the same question of niching comes up, and I train them in doing this. And the approach we take there is actually, while demographics plays a part, there's a technique or a methodology known as job to be done, which instead that you focus on what is somebody trying to actually accomplish as an outcome. And you niche down on that, because then you can say to people, look, if you bring me in, let's forget it helps to have experience on the industry, of course, etc. But you can say to somebody, I can give you this specific deliverable during my assignment. And that can become a niche, which sometimes will actually cut across industries and demographics and sometimes not. And then you can grow the conversation from there. So I found that really works to help people focus on, this is something I can really put together a value proposition around and actually deliver and become known for that.
Yeah, I guess to give you an example of it is something that we've accidentally become known for. So people know us as a social selling and a LinkedIn company. But a kind of tagline and niche that we've fallen into is that in 6 weeks, we'll teach you how to run a webinar and make money. So that's our niche. It's webinars in that angle. That's the outcome. If you want to learn how to run one to generate revenue, then you come to us. We didn't go out searching for that. That just came off the back of just a number of results that we've generated for other people. And we saw that there wasn't many people talking about it. So we've jumped in, seen the opportunity and capitalized. So I think that's a really, really spot on statement around the outcomes, Paul. We're really, really big on that. It's about what can you offer and deliver upon. And then from there, when you deliver on that over and over again, that's where your brand then starts to grow. So I think that's spot on.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Paul, for the question. Have you got any other examples there, Chris, or indeed Paul? You mentioned there about having a niche around the deliverables, around the outcome. Have you got any other tangible examples that you could share of where you've seen success, where you've had success basing a niche around an outcome?
I mean, we can. So we obviously work quite heavy in social media. So I'll give you our own examples that we've hit. We specialize in Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of them. We touch upon them all. Instagram, the outcome that we became known for was actually it was a product area that we did, which was 1,000 followers in 30 days. So the outcome was we will help you get 1,000 followers in 30 days. And that was what we became known for. We were all about follower growth at that point. We weren't about revenue generation, lead generation. It was about grow an audience at speed. So I think, like I say, an example of what everybody can do is write down all of your specialist areas and the outcomes that you can help businesses achieve. And then from there, you can pick the ones that really shine, like make you shine and what you really thrive in. And from there, I think your niches kind of all tend to appear in a long line. You can prioritize from there. I'm sure there are plenty of others. If people want to put in the chat around like what they do and what they specialize in, from there, I guarantee we'll probably pick some certain areas in which others specifically can dive into.
Great, thanks, Chris. And Paul, would you elaborate on any success you've had?
Well, as I say, mainly I do coaching and put together training programs for entrepreneurs. So I mean, I guess that's my niche in a way. But I think a better example has been some of the people that I've come across have done a fantastic job of that. One seems like a very small business, but I use it a lot to illustrate this whole concept of the job to be done. So I was doing a program for regional governments, trying to help micro entrepreneurs. And when you do that, one of the really type of person you get repeatedly are wedding photographers. So not to criticize wedding photographers, but they're a dime a dozen just about, because everybody who's got a few photography skills thinks I want to do something, becomes a wedding photographer, becomes very hard to differentiate yourself. But then I came across this woman. She was a Muslim woman, and she had come onto the perfect niche, because if somebody was having a wedding, to get somebody to photograph the experience of the bride took somebody who really understood the culture. You know, if you're going to get somebody who's used to sort of pink sashes and hen parties, that's going to be completely the wrong photographer for you. But she really understood what her customers were looking for. So she first built out that niche from that, which you could say is a demographic, because it is. But then you build a demographic for, I want somebody for my wedding that will focus on the bride side of the wedding, and approach it with a very sort of discreet, more modest perspective on it. And I use that as an example because I think it's an example of something that can be a commodity, but if you really are able to differentiate what different types of customers are actually looking for, and it may be not just that, it may be their expertise. So let's say I was going to be a fractional CFO, what somebody who's got maybe very scientific experience and absolutely no business experience needs is very different from somebody who's maybe an experienced founder and really wants somebody to focus on, you know, I'm negotiating some sort of a Series A deal with venture capitalists, or even I'm going public. So again, this goes back to the sort of job to be done. What's the outcome people want? And that's really what I do for you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. Okay, so there's two that have come up that I'm going to slightly shift lanes on here, that look interesting. So one of them is where to reach and contact prime prospects, and the other one is how to work out who needs your niche, which sounds like they're broadly similar. Does anyone want to talk or add some context around the question? Anyone that maybe voted for it or put it up?
Yeah, I mean, I put that question up about I've forgotten how I phrased it now, how to reach and contact your prime prospects or something like that, I wrote. So that's more about the actual, physically, where do we find clients? I know it's probably a broken record, and I've said similar in the past, but, we're told to kind of try and find groups of people or groups of organizations on LinkedIn, for example, possibly some things like accelerators and VCs, but that's proving to be unbelievably time consuming and not very successful. So it's just ideas, I suppose, for all of us really in general, how we can find potential clients really, as in terms of aside from networking and LinkedIn, is there anything else we can do, other ways of kind of increasing our reach to find potential clients?
So it's one of the ways that, one of the things I've done today, and I was actually chatting with one of the fractional CMOs from the network who recently got some extra work. And one of the things that she suggested, and actually I might be with her running a roundtable because she had some great words of wisdom. She recommended a couple of automation platforms around LinkedIn for reaching out and targeting particular demographics for connection, and then equally to automate content that you might want to put out there and target around those people. So I've literally taken up one of those this afternoon. In fact, the last hour and a half, plugged it in to go and target private equity investment directors in London. So there's 830 of them that are being targeted. It's already gone after, I think, 15 of them, if not slightly more. And it just makes sure that you don't get yourself banned on LinkedIn at the same time while you're making connection requests or trying to do 1,000 in 10 seconds. So it will spread it out over the coming days, and it will go and target those people for me. And hopefully I'll be able to build up a a target demographic of, if I can get 50 or 60 investment directors, and that's brilliant. I've got messages for them that I can go and target and bring in. But it means that instead of me going through, and I think in London there was something like 2,100 investment directors on LinkedIn. If I was going to try and make connection requests on all of those, I would spend all of my day doing that and not being on stuff that's actually going to add value. So if I can automate it, I'm going to automate it.
Can you share the names of some of those, Nick? What was it?
It was. I'll put it in the chat. It was the one that I decided to use was Meet Alfred. I'll put a link up for you. There was another one as well, Zapto.
Great, thanks, Nick. I know Sam had some thoughts on these as well last week, Chris. But any thoughts on this particular area?
Well, we have to be careful with what we advise on automation, because LinkedIn advise against it. Now, I have to technically advise against it, but we all need to save time at the end of the day with it. So it's use it at your own risk. That's the advice. LinkedIn is a very clever platform. It senses this stuff, and I have tested it in the past. I've not been caught in the past doing it, so there are platforms out there that are safe, but we have to say that they do advise against it in the same way. The issue I have with it, with messaging and outreach, so outreach is the form of sending messages in hope a conversation begins, is the fact that everybody's doing it. Your inboxes are probably flooded with them, with people trying to pitch you stuff, and therefore there are less messages being opened than ever before, because people don't care about them. So we have to look at it from a slightly different angle, which is how we approach things, which is how can we gain someone's attention? So let's say, I don't know what sort of companies you're going after, but let's say a top 1,000 company in the UK that you're after, multi-million-pound corporate, maybe touching on billion-pound corporate, whatever. To try and get into those people's inboxes, you can imagine how busy they are. They're probably receiving 200 messages a day, because they're all being targeted. So you can spend money on automation software, and in my opinion, just my opinion, not saying, you can pretty much, unless you've got the right marketing approach behind you, may as well be setting fire to your money, right? Because it's around $100 a month that you can end up spending on this stuff. You combine that with SalesNav, you're looking at a couple of $100 a month and still no guarantee of a result. And therefore that number does multiply over time. So what I instead look at is a couple of different things. Someone asked a question around platforms. For me, it's about being omnipresent. So I am conscious, right, that you people do not have huge amounts of time. For me, I spend 15 minutes a day on LinkedIn. I've got more important things to do. I actually can't stand the platform. I run a LinkedIn business and I can't stand social media. It drives me absolutely insane. I've just found a way to be able to generate money on it for businesses. That's how I've fallen into what we do. So for me, what I'm looking to do, it's a couple of different things. Number one is be a profile in the first place that people come searching for me. So people throw this term thought leadership around like it's sweets and that it's really easy to get. It's not. It's difficult to become a thought leader on what you do. It takes time. And so what I look to do is I look to put out the content that I know is going to travel on this platform. I'm looking for exposure and exposure only. I'm looking for impressions. There are lots of people on social media that teach this stuff that say impressions don't matter. They're normally people that don't know how to get them. They do matter. The more followers that you've got, the more opportunity will come your way. So network building, like Nick said there, connecting with these people is one thing. The way that we go after corporate type business is going after groups of people inside of the organization. So if we're going after, let's pick a name recently. FedEx was a company that Sam targeted and we wanted to do some training for. We hit 25 different people in one department and made it so it was impossible for them not to hear us. So we weren't messaging, we were commenting, and it takes around about 5 minutes a day to do it. If you look on SalesNav and you use the tool properly, their content will populate in your specific newsfeed. So you can quickly log on, target 3 or 4 companies, leave 3 to 4 comments per piece of content that you see. And that way, over time, what happens, and it's not an instant thing, don't get me wrong, because there's a number of different approaches I'm about to drop on you. But with that, they'll start to go, who are these people leaving comments? If you send messages, you get lost in the inbox. If you leave a comment, it's the one thing everybody wants on their piece of content. And therefore, when it happens, you immediately pay attention to whoever the person is. So straight away, we're looking to engage in conversation. That conversation may not lead anywhere, and that's totally fine. What we're doing is trying to get our names remembered. What we then do is run, Sam may have touched on this, Barry. I don't know if she did. I don't know what level of detail you went into last week, but we run campaigns. So we're not looking at things as a one-off message into the inbox, a ping pong of 2 or 3 messages and a deal's done. And we're all about building pipeline, hence the company name. It's about filling it at the front end with enough people that eventually contracts will happen. And the way that we do that is by putting in a marketing process behind your business. I don't care if you're a one-man band or you're a global conglomerate. We need a marketing process that's going to work for us. So what we do is we have LinkedIn activity, connection requests. I send 30 messages a day. Forgive the brash, I do it like first thing. As soon as I wake up, I copy and paste them. And what I'm looking at driving people to is a piece of what we call value-added conversion piece of content. Now, that is structured in a way that basically is there to try and grab people's attention. It's to not shock and awe. It's not quite the term because people have a negative connotation towards it, but why people should listen to us. Most people don't communicate well enough what it is that they do and why they should work with them. And the problem is you end up blending in with all of the noise. And Barry, I can share a YouTube video on this that will give you so much more detail on it. It's around about an hour long, but it will deep dive into it more than what I can cover in this. But it's all about having a process. Now, you're all fractional in your experience of what you do. You'll probably be living and breathing process in whatever you do when you go into an organization, right? And what we're looking to do is direct message into people, but with I'm not looking to have a conversation with you, because you're not interested in having a conversation with me. I know that. However, if you're looking for guidance on how to do this video I've created has helped hundreds of people. It will hit those numbers over time. Hundreds of people achieve this objective. If you want it, great, there you go. If you don't, have a nice day. And then you let your content talk in the background. And by doing that over and over and over again, what you're doing is appearing completely different to everyone else that's out there, because everyone else is just sending blanket messages that don't mean anything, that don't start conversations and end up actually pushing people away. Because what happens is if you send a message and it doesn't get a response back, LinkedIn is determining it. And this goes with any platform, Facebook, Instagram. If people don't respond to you, there is only so many profiles the platform can show each user every time you log on. So enough people being ignored, it means that you just get pushed back and you're never then seen. You may have noticed that when you first connect with someone, you can't get away from them. They're everywhere. After about 48 hours, suddenly you never see them again. And you will have friends' content that you'd love to see, but no matter how many times they post, it never shows up. It's because you've ignored them for too long. And it's really difficult to then capitalize on it. So one of the things that we're really keen on is the first impressions matter piece. So every time that you show up, it's about showing up with intent. Now I am going off and covering so many different points here, so you'll have to forgive me. But most people, and I say this a lot in my content, I speak to them on Zooms like this, and you see the passion, you see the empathy, you see the enthusiasm, you see how good they are at what they do, and then you look on their LinkedIn or any of their social media profiles, and forgive me, but they show up as the most boring versions of themselves possible. And they wonder why their social doesn't work. So what I always say to people is your personal brand, what you're looking to stand for. If you're looking for business online, you've got to start talking about the stuff that you care about, the stuff that you're opinionated on, the stuff that Sam may have said this last week, but the stuff that you champion. Like, what do you really believe should be changing in your industry, and being the spearhead for it? Because when you do that, people will remember you. And this happens time and time again. I've seen on the board, people have asked for examples of this recently. An example to go and follow with it is my business partner, Nicholas Jones. So it's one person to go and look at. Another person could be Eric Partaker. So he used to be one of the leaders at Skype when it first came, an old customer of ours. Two immediate people that are very senior and have seen great success, not just offline in business, but now online as well. And so when it comes to your LinkedIn process, it's very difficult in 10 minutes to explain what you need to do. But that's just one thing which, if you have a set of habits that take you 15 minutes a day, and you have one video a week that you create that's specifically structured to shift the psychology as to why people should work with you, and you drop that into people's inboxes, you're then building up the touch points, you're building up the dwell time. And what happens after a certain period is you'll hit a nerve somewhere where someone sits back and goes, we need to speak to this person. And that's how the inbound then happens. The other end of it is then having a proper outbound campaign. We run webinars for corporate business. We run free masterclasses for people, basically to show off how different we are. We use LinkedIn events to mass invite, get a number of around 100 people onto a workshop. Are all those people relevant and going to be the decision makers in companies? No, about 10% of them might be. But the noise that you then create from the other 90% builds your credibility further. So it's really looking at kind of like the behind the scenes process of what's working and how you show off the best version of you online. That's what we've got to get really clear on. And when you do that, your messaging will start to work, your content will start to work, and you'll start to have much better, highly qualified conversations with people that want to talk to you, rather than you having to take a call and convince and persuade someone to work with you. And so I don't know how useful that was whatsoever, but that's kind of like my initial brain dump of kind of how this social media works on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. It's just about where these people are spending their time. That's the big part of it.
No, that's perfect. Thank you, Chris. And I know it was a long and thorough answer, but I think it handled the original question, which was almost, once you've got your niche, how do you go and find the people you need to be speaking to? I think it handled it pretty head on. Mark, Giles, I know you guys were the original people that asked that. Does that answer your question? Did you have anything you wanted to ask on the back of that?
Yeah, I mean, that helps and mostly reinforces, but also a couple of other new pieces of information around the kind of social media side. But I think it's probably broader than that, outside of social media. If there's any particular way we can identify, our kind of niche clients, really. But yeah, very, very useful and detailed. I've been tapping away like a crazy man here with notes. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, it'd be great, Chris, if you could share some of those videos. You said you talked about a couple of webinars that you had, like the hour-long one. That'd be good to see.
Of course, yeah, I'll direct it. I mean, just to add to Mark's question around outside of social, I have to really emphasize a lot of our work comes off of social specifically. So again, I don't know kind of where you will focus and where you put your energy, but I spend lots of time at conferences and speaking to groups of people, even groups of 5 to 10 people, where I will go into the chief marketing conference at the O2, or I will go to the Excel and speak at the IT convention, whatever it was last year that I went. There's so many of them out there that are looking for people to give expertise in certain areas. Now, I'm not everyone is comfortable doing that, I know, but however, the people in those rooms, and it's more actually the people that buy stands in them, it's a great opportunity to be able to go and meet them and get those people into your online world. So my job when I go to these conferences, even if I'm not speaking, is to go and get connected with them online. It's my sole objective. Start a conversation, get them a little bit talking about themselves. From there, follow me online, and I know my content will then do the talking. So it's combining offline activity with online activity to get that mass scale that you're looking for. And again, then if you then speak as well and give expertise and share expertise at those conferences, that gives you another level of positioning. Get photos, share that online, you'll then get invited to more. There are loads of podcasts out there that you could be interviewed on. I know this may not be mainstream, but there will be podcasts out there that people listen to in your space, that if all you've got to do is go and message the host and see if you can get a half an hour interview on them. It's very much as similar as going on radio or TV these days, the exposure that you can get. And you've just got to identify which podcasts and which channels are currently your ideal target market are listening to. That comes from just asking them and having general conversations with them. So again, I don't know if that's the sort of detail that you're after whatsoever, but that's kind of my angle with offline. I combine it with online to basically build up the touch points and the dwell time for someone to realize that I can help solve the problem that I say I can solve.
Great. Thank you very much, Chris. Giles, as well, did you want to add anything?
I I think so. For me, and Chris, thank you. That information is really, really valuable. Just as Mark said, for me, it's a slight pivot. It's my question: how to work out who needs your niche. I think that's a slightly different pivot of what we've discussed so far, and it's trying to find out how to use social media in a way to actually discover who's looking for the particular role or need right now. How do we tap into that? How do we do events or even posts which actually somehow engage people to sort of say, yeah, I'm looking for one of those. I'm looking for a fractional CFO or whatever it is the need right now. Great, that's what I do. I don't, but that's in the example, you know. And for me, that's the thing. It's how to work out who needs your niche. Do they even know they need your niche at that point?
I mean, nine times out of 10, no. Like a lot of the businesses that we work with,
what I thought,
their problem is undiscovered and unknown. So you've got to work down the problem awareness scale from not aware to aware, but it's not really an urgent need, to suddenly being, oh my God, there's a fire here, I need to put it out, right? So that comes from doing the research for one. So I spend lots of time doing this for clients with our team, is looking at different areas of conversation in certain industries. So if you're looking, we're working with a fractional chief technology officer. So information strategy is what he deals with. A topic that he's found very, very difficult to talk about on LinkedIn, because quite frankly, no one's really on LinkedIn for that sort of information, right? We don't go on to LinkedIn for, typically, we don't go on to LinkedIn looking for education. We're on LinkedIn for our own selfish reasons, or because we're bored, like 9 times out of 10. So it's about understanding how you grab the attention. Now, to answer your question directly, for me, it comes from having conversations with people. And I know that's a really basic answer, but from being able to put on workshops talking about, so again, if I was in your position, this would be what I would do. Now, whether you feel comfortable enough doing it or not, I totally get it either way. But I'd be looking at all the specialist areas like that you can talk about, that you can post content about, or you can do a video on or whatever. I get them down on a bit of paper, and I go, right, for the next week, I'm just going to be run like a free 20-minute session where I'm just going to talk about this stuff. And then I'm going to invite people to book a call in afterwards if they want to find out even more bespoke information. I would do that not with the outcome of I'm going to sell them something or I'm going to get a contract, but actually to go, right, what I really want to do is ask you a few questions to be able to identify where you're currently at right now. Now, for me, I can help in these sorts of areas. Now, out of 10, what would you score this out of 10 in your business right now? What would you score out of 1 and 10 out of urgency? Where would you rate it? That's one way of going about it. The other thing that you can do, which is a new marketing tool that's out there that's gone online recently, is scorecarding. So you can create your own version of a scorecard and again, put a series of questions on and get people then as a lead magnet, which is something that you put out for free in exchange for an email address, to put in and answer some questions to get you some information back. And then you provide them with something free as a bit of a reward of doing so. So like we do this a lot in terms of creating that sort of strategy and how you get feedback. The other then way is what everyone would say, which is create content and start discussion in it. But it's not always the easiest because you've got to be seen in the first place. With events and setting up the workshop, you can proactively invite 1,000 people a week to your events. Therefore, you're proactively going after them. If they've got an interest in the subject and you've got 100 people show up, you know there's desire for that workshop, and therefore that's a niche you can go after. If there's 3, you know, maybe I need a change of angle and go after it. So what you're looking at doing is starting to collect all of this data so you can then start to make decisions. The only other way is by testing, picking one, testing it, seeing if there's a bite, put an X in the box and move on to the one that works. So there's a few ideas there in terms of how I would go about it if it was me.
Nice. Have you got any links to the scorecarding piece?
I haven't got any links to it, but there's a guy called Daniel Priestley that's out there that found the Score app, written some great books. I was part of his mastermind a couple of years ago. Very, very cool guy. And yeah, so if you look at him on Google, you'll see him. He's a very, very intelligent bloke.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chris.
No problem.
Richard, so you've had your hand raised for a while there. Did you have anything you wanted to add there?
A comment and a question, really. So, in terms of actually creating the content, one of the things that came to my mind remarkably late, given that I'm meant to be a marketeer, was really thinking quite hard about the audience. So not just about what I can deliver. I can write about that stuff all the time, but what I can deliver that is actually relevant to my target audience. My target audience is startup founders, business owners, CEOs, people like that. They're the people that are going to hire me, not the marketing guy, right? And so really thinking about, this is a business problem that I can fix with marketing or with my marketing skills and stuff. So really trying to sort of think about that. The question that I've got for you, Chris, really is, if you're talking about doing a sort of a live event or a webinar or something like that, the fear that we have is nobody's going to turn up, right? And you're going to look a dick. Are you just going to tell me to grow up and just do it? But
no, I'm not. I'm going to tell you to use a piece of webinar software that doesn't show people how many people are there.
Right.
So for me, I run a webinar with, I don't care. I've ran a webinar, my first ever one, no one showed up. So I've been there, I've looked the dick, right? I've been there and I've done it, got the postcard. However, I did it anyway. One, because of practice. You can never practice them too much. So for me, I've run the same webinar, which is on my YouTube channel, over 200 times. Same presentation, just over and over and over and over again. It is seriously boring, but it works, and it's painful delivering it sometimes. However, the leads that it generates, it's the lifeblood of our company. So I ran it with the intention of, if someone doesn't turn up, the replay will do its job. So deliver it anyway, and you don't have the embarrassment of, oh my god, no one, but everyone's going to know that no one's here, because they don't see the number of people. Only you see that when you use Zoom webinar as an example. You can get a free trial on GoToWebinar for 2 weeks. So you don't even have to pay for it. Just market it for 2 weeks and then cancel your GoToWebinar subscription. So you don't even pay. And so with that, for me, it's about understanding that someone may not turn up, but in time, when you start to get good at them and you start to have the right hook in the message, they will.
Cool. Brilliant. Right. Well, Janina, one more question then on this topic. I'm keen to get onto the personal branding thing if we can before we lose Chris. Janina, do you have one more question on this? Perhaps not. I can see a hand raised. No, perhaps not. Okay, no problem. Feel free to add it into the chat or speak to Chris afterwards if you did. So, Chris, then taking a sidestep into branding and what that means. Let me get back to my board here. So, how to brand yourself and any good examples of this done well is what I'm looking for here. So, with all this considered, we've got our niche now. We know exactly who we're going to go after. We've got the thought leadership piece, or we're striving towards that, and doing the videos. How do you take that into a brand? Where does a brand start and stop, and how would you explain that to a newbie in this space?
It's if anyone's actually checked out my LinkedIn profile, it was an interesting one, because I did a post about it saying I hate the term personal branding literally about 2 days ago. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's nothing that's detrimental to what the advice I'm about to give. But I think it's important to add the context to it. People put so much pressure on themselves to have this big, bold personal brand, and they end up pretending to be someone online that they're not. And what happens is that you can't keep that up for an extended period of time. Your brand is your reputation, right? You've got a personal brand, whether you like it or not. It's always there. Online is just a great way of being able to position yourself as someone that people should listen to. So for me, it's about having something that you stand for, and really putting it out there, and having opinions that you want to talk about and share to start conversation, to lead away in an industry. So my personal brand is something which has got me more opportunities than anything. Without it, I wouldn't be where I am in business. I've been really fortunate over the last 4 years to be a part of something really, really that I'm proud of. And that's just come from sharing my journey online. My personal brand has been built just from sharing myself from a kid in his bedroom to suddenly having a team of people that actually listened to him and we're doing some really cool things. That journey is something that people found interesting to watch. Now, your personal brand is whatever you want it to be, really. And I don't know if anyone's got any specific questions around whether it's how to build it or if it's how do you work out what it is. But I think the overarching term is your reputation, that you either can decide to build it positively or other people are going to define it for you with their opinions of you. I guess that is kind of the way of looking at it.
I remember somebody said on this at some point that you know, even now, if you think back to your junior school, your senior school, you know who the gossip was, you know who the bully was, you know who they were, and they were like, that's your personal brand, that's the brand, that's their brand, and it's that same thing. Yeah, it sort of stuck with me on the topic. But how do you? Okay, so maybe if we're talking about here, as you said there, just to finish, if you don't brand yourself, other people will brand you. How do you craft that? How do you make sure that you're intentional about what your brand is versus allowing other people to form their own conclusions?
Yeah, I think it's about crafting your own values, I think, and what you really stand for. And people, again, throw this language around. So let me be specific with it. My brand is very much straight to the point, blunt. I'm going to tell you the truth whether you like it or not. And it's my opinion. If you don't like it, that's totally fine. Like, that's kind of what I wanted my brand to be, because I spent an absolute fortune and got ripped off learning all of this stuff, and it didn't really help me. And so I wanted to lead the way and create something for my personal brand, was where I'm just going to be completely and utterly honest and just share my experience, which is backed up by evidence and almost facts from my own experience. And so, like, that was something that I crafted when again, blank piece of paper. When people say Chris Taylor, what do I want them to think of me? Honest, loads of empathy, but really, really straight to the point, is never going to lie to you, and may sometimes give you information and advice that you might not want to hear, but you need to hear. Like that was kind of what I wanted to craft for myself. Whereas there are some other people, Sam as an example, that isn't like, we're the complete opposite characters. Sam is completely empathetic. She's a mother. She's the most kindest person in the world. Like, she won't want to hurt anyone's feelings whatsoever. However, she's incredibly talented at what she does. Completely different personal brand to me, because we're at different stages in life and we've lived different things. So it's about understanding who you want to be online. Who are you, and what do you want to portray? Nick's personal brand, my business partner, is the family man, the businessman, the hard work, but love at the same time. So if you look at his content that he posts, he talks all about females in business and how there needs to be more of them. He talks about his kids and his family and how he's growing them to do whatever they want to do rather than be entrepreneurs. And he shares stuff about that. And I think, like I say, your personal brand is crafted by values and then also the stuff that you want to talk about. Like, most people treat content like it's a bit of a chore. Like, they do it because someone on the internet's told them it's important to do if they want to generate some business. And that sort of content never really works. The content that works is the stuff that you're opinionated on, that you want to talk about, that's going to start conversation that you can passionately engage in. Like, I'm unfortunately a Man United fan. Sometimes I talk about how bad they've been online. They've crafted me and labeled me as that, and that's something that I live. That's part of my personal brand. My dad played cricket for England. Cricket is part of my life. I'll talk about the Ashes that's just gone on, and that's part of my personal brand. But then I have the business side as well, which is this. So I think it's looking at all the different areas, picking the stuff that you're willing to share online, because some people don't want to share family and personal stuff and relationships, but they may want to share their passions in sport or their passions in business in areas that don't directly relate to the work that they do. And then from there, voluntarily sharing the stuff that you've got opinions on. And that, over time, combined with the results that you generate through your profession, that combined then generates your reputation. And so what you need to do is combine it both to be able to stand out.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Does anyone have any questions to come back on that, on the subject of branding, or any part of that? Is anyone struggling with their particular brand or feel like they've nailed it?
No, I was just going to say, well, apart from who was your dad, I think it's kind of trying not to be too vanilla. It's really easy just to be ultra professional and you know, It's quite boring, isn't it, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that actually, Richard. I mean, you need to show that human element, I think. I don't know how that works in terms of, branding, but certainly I tend to post mostly, try to build up a kind of thought leadership kind of branding and speak out about things, offer free advice, but kind of interspersed with some personal kind of, interests or fun stuff every now and then. And that seems to do, just as well, sometimes better than content I've spent a couple of hours on. So I think that I would hope that helps.
It definitely will do. I think, like I say, most people, if you look at a news feed, you'll scroll past 20 pieces of content before you stop on one. The one that you stop on is just the one that you relate to. 9 times out of 10, the stuff that you relate to is stuff that's going on in your life, passions that you've got. So the way that I always look at this is, I'm known as a bit of a ranter. Don't know if that comes off whatsoever on this call. But whenever I get triggered by something, I'll write it down. I'll create a piece on what's triggered me, because if it's triggered me, it's probably going to trigger something else. If there's something that's upset me on Google, if you go and type in the emotions wheel, right, there's a load of emotions that sit there. It's a psychology tool. It's how our brains work. And with that, if you look at it, just pick an emotion and go, right, what's made me feel like that recently? Something that I do 9 times. If I'm ever struggling for content ideas, and I'll go, right, what's disgusted me recently? And I'll share that level of that piece of content that's got me going. The emotion triggers the reaction in everyone else's brain to get them then to start in conversation, to either say, oh, I agree with you, that's absolutely ridiculous, or I completely disagree, that's not true whatsoever. And so, yeah, I will find the blend of the stuff that's triggered me. If I'm then struggling, I'll look at what emotions have I related to. So, like, I had a couple of setbacks a couple of weeks ago where some of the webinars that I ran completely tanked. So I was a little bit upset. I wasn't very happy. And I shared that. So because I know other people have had stuff that's happened to them as well, and then they've stopped doing it. I made it that I'm not going to stop. I'm going to carry on going, and I'm going to run another one. And that generated more momentum. And if you look at someone's profile, so I keep diverting back to Nick's content, so Nicholas Jones in that, because he's doing it better than I'm doing it at the moment, so I can't volunteer myself to look at. But if you look at his stuff, he has elements of business stuff in there, elements of personal stuff in there, but everything is emotionally charged. And it's the biggest tip that I can give anyone when it comes to content. If you watch films, if you watch TV, anything that grips you is normally triggering emotion in you. We're watching Supervet at the moment on TV. It's the most emotionally gripping thing that I've watched for a very long time. But I want to watch more and more of it. Your content needs to be done in the same way. Now, whatever emotion you want to share is totally fine, but that stuff is what's going to drive the engagement on your account.
I have a question here for you, Chris. I've spoken to a bunch of people about starting to get into LinkedIn and some of the issues that people face. And there is this, it's very difficult when you first get in, right? It's hard to start getting your emotions, like you come across, as you say, very blunt, very direct, very candid, and not someone that's really going to care if someone writes a negative comment as to one of your posts.
I definitely do care.
At least that's how you come across, right?
Yeah.
But was it always that? Were you always that kind of thick-skinned about things, or have that way, like, or did you find that you got there gradually over time? And have you guided people through that journey when they are perhaps maybe a bit more nervous to share their true, raw, triggered emotions online?
So I'm a big believer. This is how I get around it, because I'm not a master at this. So do I help people through it? Yes. It's really easy to help other people do it. It's even harder to do it for yourself. Like, I'm a big believer in that. But I'm a big believer in feedback. So if I get something shared negatively, it's constructive feedback. Because if they've got something negative to say, there's normally something that's triggered it. And so I look at it and I'll go, right, so we run Facebook ads. Facebook ads, you're going to get grief no matter what, especially if you're helping people make money, you're going to get hammered for it. And so, like, I sit back and I look at it and I go, right, is their comment justifiable? Is there reason, logic behind it? If they're just calling me a fat, then I'm not going to listen, because it's got no logic to the ad. If, however, they say, I tried this, it didn't work, it's an absolute scam, I'll go, well, what did you try? And then I'll have conversation, because that's then something that helps me. on the flip side of that, I've then got positive feedback. In the same way, you can get flooded with positive feedback on this stuff, but you can't let it go to your head. You look at it, is it a valid point? Okay, yes, it is. Let's do more of that. Is it just someone that's just putting it just for the sake of putting it? Could be. It happens a lot. Some people do. So I've got to take that with a pinch of salt. So there's good that comes with the bad. That's the way that I look at it, right? There's other people out there that will literally just say, if you look at good feedback and you love good feedback, you've got to take the bad stuff with it because it happens in a I don't know what the word, like a black and white way. So you either accept it or you ignore both ends. So you ignore good feedback and you ignore negative because otherwise it's an imbalance. For me, I'm just about feedback. Like I would take the good and the bad. It hurts. Like when I get negative stuff, it does. Like I always get, but I always just go, look, take a step back, don't respond to it there and then. Unless someone's really accusing me of something, then again, I'll engage in debate. But there's also no shame in deleting a bad comment.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. And any words, any final words on that for someone that is like standing at the edge of the pool and just about to get into the deep end to nudge them to get their first post out there?
I think the biggest thing with it is have someone to check it over for you. So I do this with everything, right? I get an influx of messages when I do it. So take me up because we do get through them. One is feel free for your first post that you do, send it to my LinkedIn inbox. I'll check it over for you and give you my feedback. I do that for everyone. There's 20 people, 21 people on this call. Whoever watches the replay, do it again. As long as you're connected with me, I'll do that for you. And so that's one thing. The second thing is that I have never had anything negative happen because of my personal brand, and I've been doing it not for that long, 4.5 years. It's only been positive. And the more people that have seen me, the more opportunities has come my way with it. So my biggest thing is that don't worry if no one engages. Don't worry if no one comments. You can always improve on it. But just get the first one done. Start building momentum. And then from there, you can always look at the statistics and improve as you go.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. Any final comments to be made by anyone? Any questions or anything like that? We're closing in on 4 o'clock here. Feel free to jump. One thing I will say is to make sure you connect with other people on the call. There is a bit on the far left of the form on the Miro board, which I'll post one more time. Feel free to put your LinkedIn details there, connect with everyone else there. We'll try and send something out as well. But no, other than that, just to say thank you so much for everyone for being here and for lasting to the end. Thanks for everyone that got involved. Massive thank you to Chris for being here as well and answering so many of the questions. And well, we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.
To meet you.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Barry, did you say it's on there now on the Miro board?
Should be on the far left, mate.
I can't see a thing.
Next to how will this work?
I'll try refreshing it.
Okay. You good? You got it?
No.
Don't know what to tell you. It's if you look at instructions here.
Oh, okay. It's all the way over there. Okay.
Just on the left.
Okay, yeah, I've got it now. So I'll go and get myself another brandy.
Enjoy, mate. Enjoy the rest
Thanks a lot,
of the
guys.
afternoon, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.